Hi everyone, I think that I am finally about to get this little telephone set up right, and maybe I'll have it right in just a minute, but I've got to get a good bit better with this thing. I already see that. I am Peggy Mercer. This is my YouTube channel. Welcome to the writing part of my YouTube channel. I know I have a lot going on, and I'm going to format it somewhat better, and that's coming shortly. Today is the Writing for Love and Maybe Money YouTube channel, and welcome back to the writing. I'm going to get that going real hot and heavy because I have so many people that contact me and say they want to know about writing. I do have an office coming, and I will be setting my writing studio up the hill in a mobile home that I own, and try to get it out of my house because my cats don't like the noise, and so we're going to be trying to do that. But welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to try a little bit again. I did try a few minutes ago to get the poetry sessions going, and I have taught classes in college, and I taught school, and I taught my young people how to write poetry and so on and so forth. You may be wanting to be a poet. You may be a poet. You may have written poetry all your life like I did. I think a lot of times when we write these wonderful books that we write and everything, I think we did get our start writing poetry. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I got my start writing poetry. I started writing my name when I was 3 years old on the farmhouse walls where we lived. And the boards, I'll never forget the boards on the walls of that old house. They were this wide. I'm telling you, they were a foot or longer or wide. And I'd take my number 2 pencil that my mama got for me, and she worked at the school, and I didn't work at the school and go with her, but I went with her a lot. But I loved words, and my mother saw to it that I loved books, and I loved to practice making little letters on the walls and stuff like that. And I always said I wrote my first piece of writing on the farmhouse walls at the old Sidney Adams house out there in the country down near the river. So I have been a writer all my life. I have loved the power of words, and so all of you are looking at me saying, well, is she going to talk about poetry? I had a kid one time in one of my classes, and program I was doing as a librarian when I worked at the library, years and years at the library. And I had this kid sitting out there, and I had advertised that we had a guy that was going to come in and sing a song and tell some little stories and stuff. And they were all waiting for this guy sitting there with his guitar, but he wasn't playing the guitar. He was talking about himself and his life as a storyteller. And this little kid, about 4 years old, raised his hand in the back of the room, and he was so excited. He wanted to say something, kept raising his hand. So we said, well, honey, what is it? You know, children are always going to say something or do something kind of outlandishly. And the little kid raised his hand, and when we asked him what it was that he needed, he said, is he going to sing or what? And so the whole room cracked up, and there went the punchline. And so the little kid wanted up, man was going to do what he said he was going to do. So I got on here to talk about poetry, and let me start, okay? Poetry, of course, is all about the power of words to create an image. You have to be a pretty good writer to write award-winning poetry, which I'm not saying I'm a great writer, but I guess I'll just break my arm, pat myself on the back. I have written award-winning poetry from my days working and reading poetry at the cloister on Sea Island, Georgia, for Congress, women and men, and from my days as a member of the Georgia State Poetry Society in Atlanta, and I'll tell y'all all about that maybe in the next video. But right now, if you want to write poetry, you stay with me. You are going to write poetry. And I'm not saying just get a notebook and start writing a rant about Trump or a rant about the price of rice or the war in Iran or the earthquakes in Venezuela, which is horrible, and we all need to be in prayer for those people. But I'm saying write significant poetry that will touch somebody. I believe it was the poet Robert Francis that said a poem has to be like arrows that you shoot at somebody. They have to wound the reader, and we always take that to mean they have to touch the reader. Maybe not just cut him to shred, but they've got to evoke, they've got to get some kind of emotion out of him. And it doesn't need to be negative. It doesn't need to be anger. It doesn't need to be venom. So if you're one of those poetry that's just filling up notebooks, writing your own personal rant, you know what? That's good for you. It's good for you if you're in counseling. It's good for you if you're in a mental hospital and you cut out cats a while and write poetry for a while. But it's not what we call great poetry. It's not award-winning poetry. It's not poetry that's going to win you a National Book Award or a Pulitzer Prize in poetry. It's not going to win an award because it's not going to sell very many copies, if any. So one way to tell that your poetry sucks real bad is try to give a copy away. And I had a guy tell me that he was getting copies from a guy that was writing poetry, and he got the copy just to be nice, and the man was giving them away because he couldn't sell them. And he walked by a trash can, and the first thing he did was toss that bit of poetry into a trash can. And I think I'll just get my cup right here and have a little drink of coffee. Excuse me. Yes, okay. And I have my cat cups. I'll have one of those next time. And I want to share with you folks then what is poetry. Poetry is a creation of thoughts on a certain subject, maybe, that, or when we talk about free verse, just let it roll, okay? But that creation or recipe or image that you're going to create has to evoke an emotion from the reader. It's not a novel. It's not nonfiction. It's not a big, thick book, although a collection can get pretty thick if you remember the Edgar Allan Poe collections and how big that they would get. So you can compile poetry in a collection. What good is that if none of it is good poetry? Like I said, it may be good for your therapy, but it's not great poetry, and it's never going to be called great poetry. They tell me, a lot of you young aspiring poets tell me that you've been approached by an Indian publisher. Now, publishing is a business, and they will approach you and say, oh, if you will pay us $200 or $300, well, my goodness, we're going to publish a wonderful book for you because you are such a wonderful poet and you're very good at this. And of course, they're going to suck you in and build you up so that they can get your money. But it's very obvious that if you pay in somebody to publish your stuff, then it's no good, and they know it's no good, and they know you're all about ego. And so what you're going to do is amass a bunch of trash, and then someday when you're dead and gone, your wife or your girlfriend or your daddy, your mom, or somebody just going to take it out and have a bonfire with it. That's the truth. So what you want to aim to do and the tools you need, so on and so forth. And I see my girl Sally coming. Sally, you want to get up here? If everybody will excuse me for one little second. Let me get my girl Sally. Hang on just a minute. And here comes my girl Sally. And this is Sally. And Sally has been with me for a few weeks now. And I rescued Sally. Got her out of the edge of the woods. And she was about dead. And she's still about dead. But she's being fed goat milk. And I've raised, don't care what they say, I have raised a lot of kittens on milk and goat milk and so on, so I pretty much am going to raise her. And right now she's a little, she looks like she's been rubbed down with Vitalis, old Vitalis tonic, and that's because she has had a bath, and I've been trying to get fleas off her. But Sally will hang around with me while I talk about poultry. Is that all right? Sally's got a little bit of a ways to go, and hopefully, if you people know anything about cats that I may need to know, please send me a message. I am using diatomaceous earth on Sally, and I see her shaking her head, so she may be going to have to go to the vet to get a little bit of help going for her a little bit more, because I'm very attached to my girl Sally. Her name is Mustang Sally, and I just love this baby so much. But anyway, she loves her mama. So we're talking about poetry, and I may write a poem about Sally. So the first thing we're going to say is that poetry is a piece of writing that fits in a certain criteria. And although it's your poem, it's about what you want it to be about. It's about something that touched you and got your blood up a little bit, or broke your heart, or made you so happy. And so this poem that you're writing, or these thoughts that you're having about a Sally maybe, they've got to touch your heart before they touch the reader's heart. And I can already tell you, if they don't touch you, they're not going to touch the reader. I made a poster a few years ago. Dawn Morgan made this poster for me from Bakersfield, California, and I love that girl so good. And she made a poster for me that said, an inch of gold won't buy an inch of life. And I'll show that to you in my next video. That is an old saying that one of my former poetry students, Udema, out of Africa, said to me one time. He said that he knew an inch of gold would not buy a life, and I created this thought: an inch of gold won't buy an inch of life. And that was a line from a bluegrass song that I wrote, Next Tomorrow, and some people recorded that out of Mississippi. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, if you are a poet, make sure that you carry around with you, you can go to the Goodwill store and buy all these wonderful little books, and I'll get some in here to show them to you. They're little blank books, and you can carry that, stick it in your purse, or stick it in your backpack or your back pocket or something like that, and take it with you everywhere you go, because I can assure you that if you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with an absolutely beautiful, wonderful, world-changing, poetic thought that you want to put in one of your poems, I can assure you, you will forget it in 10 minutes if you don't write it down. So make sure you have a little blank book or a little pad. It can be that big, it don't matter, but something to write with. And you can't write with your finger. Nowadays I'm seeing that you can, but you can't really write down anything with your fingers. So have a pen and a little booklet with you everywhere you go. I have been known to write poems on the back of napkins, and when I was in the hospital last summer, I was writing a poem on a prescription for some kind of nausea stuff, and I'll have to tell y'all all about that a little bit later. um, when you get ready to write a poem, you have to have a thought, maybe on something that you're out walking in the woods. And I have a really fabulous uh, friend that writes just mesmerizing poetry. His name is John Doria, and he has this beautiful dog named Oreo, and he writes a lot of poetry about Oreo, and he writes a lot of poetry about that gorgeous granddaughter that he and Jeannie have. And hello, John, over in Carolina, and I hope you're watching the weather today, and we're watching that storm off the East Coast. But John writes a lot of beautiful poetry. I really love his poetry. It has really been an honor for me early on to do a little work with some of his poetry, which went on to win a Poetry of the Year contest. And so if you are going to be a poet, start gathering your thoughts. Write your thoughts down. Don't write your rants for 40 pages and call that a poem. That is not a poem. Now, I'm going to really sort this out for you, and I'll do that in the next video. But I want you to read great books of poetry by some of the great writers of my generation. And who are some of those great writers? Of course, the early poets, the poets that through the ages have written just fabulous world-winning poems. Bertolt Brecht, Ruth Stone, who won the National Book Award for her book In the Next Galaxy. Go back to the Rod McEwen poetry. I think the story that Rod McEwen has was that he wrote Listen to the Warm, and he got turned down by every publisher in New York and finally sold 15,000 copies, I believe it was, for Listen to the Warm, and therein it was history, because then a big publisher jumped on it. You know what? Which just kind of goes to show you, these people are all about money, and we kind of know that. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit later. You must, if you're writing poetry, probably have a time and place to do that, where you don't have a lot of silly distractions and so on and so forth. Anyway, so find a place, find a room, find a shed, get yourself a little writing spot where nobody bothers you, and that environment will lend itself best for writing. Now, there is something about writing poetry that makes aspiring poets want to think, well, this is easy. All I have to do is just write down these thoughts and I'll call it a poem. And that's not going to separate your junk, if you're writing junk, from really great poetry. So I'll say this again, it behooves you to read everything that Dr. Phyllis Estes has ever written. Dr. Phyllis Estes was the counselor who worked at Columbine, and she writes the most wonderful, I think her short stories are just, and her novels just have so much poetry in them. She wrote this. She wrote The Faithful Gardener, one of my favorite books of all time. And there's prose in that, and there's poetry. And the poetry will make you stop in your tracks and reread that line. That is her power for her lyrical writing is. And hello, Phyllis, how are you today? Ruth Stone's poetry is so mesmerizing to me. National Book Award winner in 2002. When I won Georgia Author of the Year in 2011, which of course is supported by the National Endowment for the Arts, it comes out of the governor's office. And I went to Atlanta to get my award from Georgia Authors of organization out of Atlanta. I was able to sit down in a chair and have a long chat with Terry Kay. Of course, one of my favorite writers was Terry Kay. He passed away a few years ago, and I want to tell you that he gave me some advice about writing poetry. Hello, everybody. Get your advice from the people that do it. Don't let old librarians and people tell you too much and influence you too much. Don't sit down at a restaurant with one of your best friends or go ask your wife if she loves your poetry because she wants to get something out of you today, and she's going to say, oh yeah, I love that. You may love your cover for your poetry book. I love my covers, but there's more to it than that. You have to have words that create an image. It can't be negative. It can't be rants. It can't be ugly. It can't use negative, trashy, vulgar writing. That's such a turn off. And that's one where the audience for that kind of writing is just like there's only one person who likes it, and that is you. And that's why nobody will buy it. So when you're writing poetry, you want to walk the walk of the power of words. There's so many beautiful words out there. I am a person who reads Striking White while I'm standing in line waiting to get something, and I see 30 people. I pull up my Striking White. One of my girlfriends said I was the only person she had ever known that stands in line and reads style books and stuff like that. And so I am looking for the power of words. I am going to talk to you about how these words are put together. I have poetry books. I have the Faithful Poems. Most lately, I have the Faithful Poems of Big Daddy Allen. And in the Faithful Poems of Big Daddy Allen, which was an award winner and just was on the bestseller list, I was so thrilled. There it was, right up there between some great poets on Amazon on the bestseller list, and it went all the way to the top. The Faithful Poems of Big Daddy Allen has a whole chapter in there of cinquains, and cinquains are poetry format, I think developed in the 1800s by a lady. And it's the use of the cinquain is 2 sentences of 22 syllables each. So you think about these things and you think, oh, that's a poem I could never write. 2 sentences. Today is 2 syllables. Tomorrow is going to be what? 3 syllables. Sally is 2 syllables. I love you all, and I'm going to end this today, but this is the launch. This is the introduction to writing poetry. Get you a notebook and keep it. Write in it. Write your thoughts in it. You may think, well, I'm going to write a nature book like my buddy John Doria wrote, and it's on Amazon. He's got a recent book called Walk in the Woods on Pine Cones or something. I'm going to show you that book when I come back on here. And my book, The Faithful Poems of Big Daddy Allen. And then I have another book of poetry coming out very shortly. And I can't seem to get through with it because it spawned a wonderful song, and we're in the process of setting that up to be recorded. And I kind of wanted it all to happen at the same time. So Sally and I are going to get off of here right now, and we are going to tell you to get your notebook and carry it around with you. These moments that make your soul sing. Look, I'm writing a wonderful song about my new poetry book. A song came to me in the music and I could hear the whales sing. I love you all. I want you to write poetry that means something. I, when I read the Bible, the whole Bible to me is poetry. There are parts of the Bible, the story of Queen Esther. I'm going to tell you something. Esther, when she was the queen, of course, and the Egyptians were coming through, and she didn't know what to do, because if you went in there where the king was, and you interrupted whatever he was doing, which was sometimes reading and stuff like that, but if you interrupt him, you could get your head chopped off. But her cousin told her, you have to do something to keep him from killing those children of Israel so they can pass through our country without harm. That was her cousin Mordecai talking to her. And she said, well, I don't know. But she was brave and had courage. And guess what he said to her? You were born for such a time as this. How poetic is that? The whole Bible's full of poetry. The best poetry in the world's in the good book. Now, I'm going to be talking to you in the next video about poetry formats, because we want to be good at what we do. We don't want to be sloppy. We don't want to write how much we hate Donald Trump. Oh my goodness, please, come on. If everybody would give him a chance, you would even get more poetry out of him and more wonderful things to happen in this great nation. Make America great again. Make America write poetry again. Make kids write cursive. Look, there is no end to the poetry we find in everyday life. Is that right, Sally? So let me see if Sally wants a little bit of her milk, and let me see if I can save her a little bit further. And I know she looks rough, but she's going to look like a really good baby one day. For those of you who are interested in cats, I may just show you some cats pretty quick. I found a couple of Persians at the edge of the woods, and I could not find their owner. One of my Persians had 5 babies the other night, and we lost one, so she's got 4. One of the other Persians has had 3 of the most beautiful babies I have ever seen in my life. They are smoky gray and fat and fluffy with something like, I don't know, blue topaz eyes, and I'll show you them when we get back. I'm going to be back on here in 2 days. That's the promise, talking about different formats and styles of writing poetry. I want you to have an award-winning poetry book to come out this year. Can you do it? Stick with me. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye, Sally. Say bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye. I know I look like Vitalis, but I'll get better.